Today I'm going to be showing you how to crochet the corner to corner granny square. Now you can make these squares small, large, however big you want them to be. They look really, really effective when joined together to really highlight this diagonal effect. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to crochet the corner to corner granny square. I'm also going to show you this optional additional round of squaring it off if you wanted to go ahead and join for a look like this. If you prefer to not have this additional optional white round, or in this case black round, for your squares, in my next video I will be showing you how you can join as you go just the sort of granny square itself. So please don't feel that the only way you can make these is by having this additional border. I'm just going to show you this in the video so we have options, because everybody loves options. This is a fantastic square. It's a square, a corner to corner granny square that stays square, which in itself is quite an impressive thing, because we all know how these have a tendency to be a little bit wonky or sometimes flare out, but this pattern doesn't do that, and you're going to learn why in just a moment. So let's leap straight on in to the tutorial. To begin, pop a slip knot onto your hook. Then chain 4. Then join with a slip stitch to that very first chain you made to form a tiny little ring. Chain 4. And then into that little ring, you're going to work 3 double crochet stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. Those 3 double crochet stitches form a granny cluster. Now to end this first row, we're going to end with an extended double crochet worked back into that central ring. So to work your extended double crochet, yarn over, go into that ring, pull up a loop, and you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Now yarn over and pull through that very first loop only. So you'll still have 3 loops on your hook, then you can work off the double crochet as normal. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So you have your chain 4, your granny cluster, and then an extended double crochet to finish. For row 2, chain 4, and turn. Now we're going to work a granny cluster in between this last stitch and your cluster from the row below. So pull it apart, and into this first gap here, work a granny cluster, which is 3 double crochet stitches. Then skip your granny cluster from the row below and into this end space by your chain 4 and your granny cluster. In there, we're going to work another granny cluster, so 3 double crochets all into that space. And then to finish this second row, work an extended double crochet into this exact same place. So work a double crochet as normal, but on your very first yarn over, when you have your 3 loops, yarn over and pull through 1, then work it off as normal. For row 3, chain 4 and turn. Now, just like before, in between the space between that last extended double crochet and the granny cluster from the row below, in between those stitches, work a granny cluster of 3 double crochets, just straight into that space. Then in between the granny clusters from the row below, work another granny cluster, so 3 double crochets, just into that gap in between your sets of 3. Then into this very last space in between the chain 4 and the granny cluster from the row below, so right over here in the end, we're going to work a granny cluster of 3 double crochets, and then to finish, an extended double crochet into that same space. For row 4, and row 4 is the pattern repeat row, which all that means is you're going to repeat this row 4 back and forth until your project is the width that you want it to be. You start by chaining 4 and turn, then work 3 double crochets, granny cluster, into that space in between the cluster and the end stitch of the row below. So you'll start every row like this, chain 4 and 3 double crochets. Then in between the granny clusters from the row below, during the middle section of the row, you just work a granny cluster in between each. You'll grow by 1 more granny cluster for each row as you go. Once you get to the very end and there's no more spaces in between the clusters from the row below, at the end, into the space in between your last granny cluster and the chain 4 from the row below, over here, to end, you work 3 double crochets, so your little granny cluster, and then an extended double crochet stitch. So you would keep going, building in rows until your project is the width that you want it to be. Now I'm only going to make a small square today. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows already. So I'm going to go ahead and crochet another 2 rows and then we can begin the decrease. So for every row, when you are increasing on this first section, chain 4, turn, and work a granny cluster into that immediate space in between the last 2 stitches. Then a granny cluster of 3 double crochets into each section along the row until you get to the other side. So just working straight into the gaps between the clusters from the row below. And when you have worked in between all the clusters on this very, very end section, between those last 2 stitches, end with 3 double crochet followed by an extended double crochet stitch. Now you can take this as wide as you want to. Just keep going. You don't need to worry about whether it's odd or even rows. You can see it stays nice and square by starting with a chain 4 and ending with the extended double crochet stitch. It stops it from flaring, so it's a nice square project. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more row. As I say, you guys continue until your square is as wide as you want it to be. Then we can work on the decrease. So once your square is the width that you want it to be, we can start the decrease, so to bring it back to a point on the other side. How you count how many rows you've done is just along the side here. Your granny clusters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, as I mentioned, you can take this as wide as you want to. You can keep little squares, or you can do one large square. So when you're ready to decrease, we're going to do things a little bit differently for the decrease rows. Chain 3. So we will not be chaining 4 anymore. Chain 3. Turn your work. And we're going to ignore this space in between the last 2 stitches that you've been working into. For the increase rows, ignore this, and we're going to leap straight over into the next space in between your granny clusters. And you're going to work a granny cluster into that space. So completely ignore this side section and work a cluster of 3 double crochet stitches in between the clusters from the row below. Then work a granny cluster in between, just as you did on the increase, in between the granny clusters from the row below, but stop at this very last spot before the end side section. So you've got your chain 3, you've skipped working into this side section, and we're just working granny clusters across the row. Now, once you reach this very end cluster, on the increase, we worked into this gap in between the last 2 stitches here. Now, we're still going to work into there, but we're not going to work a granny cluster. Instead, we're going to work 1 extended double crochet. That's it, just the 1 stitch to finish. So you have your chain 3, you've skipped working into the side, granny clusters along the row, and then ending with an extended double crochet into this side section here. Chain 3 and turn. Now things get a lot easier on the decrease rows from this point on. Skip this very first space, ignore that completely, and work a granny cluster into the next one along in between your granny clusters from the row below. So ignore this space and go into the next one with a granny cluster. Now work granny clusters in between the granny clusters from the row below. So wherever you have granny clusters, work a new one in between them. Now you're left with a granny cluster and the chain 3 sort of space from the row below. Into that space, that very, very end one, work an extended double crochet only. So you can see we are working back to a point. So we're simply going to repeat what we did in the last row. Chain 3, turn, ignore that very first space here and work your first granny cluster into the second one. Work them in between the granny clusters from the row below. So wherever you have 2 granny clusters side by side, put your new granny cluster in between them. This will shrink by 1 on each row. So you get faster and faster. The decrease is the best bit. Then, when you have run out of these granny clusters from the row below, you'll be left with just 1 chain space at the very end. In that chain space, work your extended double crochet stitch. So you can see I've only got 3 now. I had 4 clusters the row below, 5 clusters the row below that. So on the next one, I know I'll only have 2, and then on the one after that, I will have 1. So we'll work these next couple of rows together, chain 3, turn, ignore that very first chain space, and work your granny cluster into the second one, in between your sets of clusters from the row below. Then into this very last end space here, work an extended double crochet stitch. Chain 3, turn. Now I've only got 2 granny clusters from the row below, so I know I only need 1 in between them, so I'm skipping this first space, work my granny cluster in between the sets from the row below. And then end with an extended double crochet into that chain space. Now don't cut your yarn yet, we're not finished. So you've worked back down just to 1 cluster. Now we want this end section to be nicely sort of squared off and to mirror this very beginning chain 4 ring that we worked into. So to end, once you have done your very last row, which only has 1 granny cluster in, to end, chain 1, turn your work, and work a normal double crochet into this very end space over here. Just work a double crochet as just a standard one, not an extended one. Then chain 1, snip your yarn, leaving a sort of generous tail that you can weave in afterwards. Pull it through, pull it tight, And now you should have a nice squared off corner that matches the beginning. Now, if you like this naked look, stop at this point. And in my next video, I will show you how you can join these squares as you go. So you can build them and join them together. However, I'm going to show you an optional border row to square them off for if you prefer that look. So the optional border row to square off your corner to corner granny square, grab your second colour of yarn. So with your second colour, go ahead and join it into this sort of little space we created where we ended our work. So this is your chain 1 and your double crochet. It's created a little hole. So go ahead and join your yarn, your new colour of yarn. However you prefer to join your yarn, it's completely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and just pop a slip knot onto my hook and pull that loop to the front of my work. Now chain 3, which counts as your first double crochet stitch, and then work a double crochet into that exact same space. This is the point at which you need to decide how you are going to join your finished granny squares. Now, any traditional granny square joining method works for these corner to corner granny squares on this final border. So it is totally personal preference as to whether you sew your squares together, crochet them together, do a tight join as you go, slip stitch join afterwards, whatever join you prefer doing. If it is a traditional join as you go where you chain 1 in between your side stitches, the clusters, then you go ahead and you chain 1 in between the stitches that I'm going to show you, or the groups of 2. If you prefer to sew them together afterwards, then continue in the method I'm going to show you now. For my sample piece, I used, not that you can see, because of course I used black in my infinite wisdom, but here I used my join as you go slip stitch method, which should have popped up here now. Creates this pretty little braid. That's the method I used for attaching my squares together. However, as I say, you make that decision now how you want to join your squares and tailor this final round accordingly. For mine, because I did my slip stitch as you go, I'm not going to be chaining on these side sections. Instead, I am just going to work 2 double crochets into each side gap along the way. So no chaining. If I was doing a traditional join as you go method, like I normally do for my granny squares, I would be chaining 1 in between these sets of 2 stitches. Now the reason I am only doing 2 double crochets down these side sections is I found when I did 3, like a traditional granny cluster, it made it a bit too ruffly. I just had 1 too many stitches in there. I found that having 2 worked perfectly for my tension. Now again, if you find this is pulling in too tight, just having the 2, then you are free to switch it up and have 3 double crochet stitches in the side spaces. This round is optional. You can customize it to however your personal tension or joining methods just happen to be. So keep working 2 double crochets in each of these side spaces down the row, or across the top, I guess I should say, because we're squaring these off in the opposite way to how they were created. Now, once you get over to this other side, you'll be greeted with this section that has 4 stitches. So this was your very last increase row before we started the decrease rows. So the decrease rows, very easy peasy to see the sort of side spaces we're working into. But on this section here, where you have 4 stitches, we need to form a corner here. So we're going to work in between these last 2 stitches, and in between I'm going to pop 2 double crochet stitches, chain 3. Now if you prefer to chain 2 on your corners, you can chain 2 instead of 3, and then to form the corner, working back into that same space, I'm going to put 2 more double crochet stitches. So I have 2 coming along the side, then I formed a corner on the corner, then turn as you come around and work your stitches into these side spaces at the end of each row again. They're fairly easy to spot, so you don't need to pull anything apart or squint too hard. Just keep working to every end gap of each row. Then we will be at your very start point where we formed a little ring with 4 chains, and into that little ring we're going to form a corner. Now however you formed your corner on this side, we're going to repeat that into this central ring. So for me that is 2 double crochets, chain 3, 2 double crochet stitches. Might be a little bit tight getting in there, but just bear with it. Then turn it around again, and exactly what you have been doing all the way up. Pop your stitches into the side sections at the end of each row. And then once again, this side is a bit easier to see than this corner over here. But once you get to this section that has 4 stitches, into this section, the last 2 stitches of that section of 4, this is your very last increase row here. Again, we're going to work a corner. So as you come to the sort of edge of your work, always form a corner. So for me, my corners, 2 double crochet, chain 3, 2 double crochet. Your corners will be whatever corners you are working. So you have your corner down here, you've worked up the side, and then we're coming back round again. Now we are back to that final decrease side, and again it gets much easier to spot these spaces in between, and pop your stitches just into these side gaps all the way back along. And then to finish, you'll be right back to where we started in this very end space here. We already have 2 stitches, which is right where we started at the beginning. We need to finish off this final corner. So pop 2 double crochet stitches, chain 3, and then join to that beginning stitch you did. That very first chain 3, we're going to slip stitch to the top just here. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch. Then chain 1, cut your yarn, leaving a length to weave in, pull that through, pull it tight, and then you can weave in all your ends. Now, as I say, how you go on to join with this optional squared off round is entirely up to you. If you need ideas for how to join granny squares, I have a playlist full of different options for you. So you can tailor this final round to whatever method you want to join your squares with. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you can see how stunning these squares look worked up, how dramatic they look when you do this extra additional separate border to join them all together. It really highlights the diagonal of this corner to corner granny square. However, as I mentioned, if you don't want to do this additional border, in my next video I will show you how you can just straight up join as you go without the need for that additional round. So stay tuned for that one. And until next time, happy crocheting!